Hello there, this is Tom Jakovlik, and I'm showing you the creation that I came up with for activity design number one. And what I came up with was essentially a pottery wheel. And I believe you can see some of this right here. And I also included some of the tools that would normally be used by an individual. And this was based on my wife's ideas of what she wanted to be in terms of what she wanted to do in terms of being showing creative activity expression. And this is one of the tools. And here's another. So you can see that too well, but it is again a way to shape the clay. And here's another one. And again, these are just different tools that, if you were in the pottery field, this would normally be cut out. Let me show that right there. There would be two loops there would have cut out ends. And then again, that's to shave off some of the outside exterior clay. This is for more creating lines, grooving lines inside the clay. And of course, here's a bigger loop for shaving off sections. So these are again crafting tools, which I thought was pretty cool. Now over here, I don't know if you can see this, but this is a bowl, and it sits on a spinning wheel. It's just too close to really see accurately. I'll try to make it stiller there. And then if you look over here, there is a wire. Let's see if I can get this to the right spot here. That is an actual pedal. So, hold on here. Let me get to the right spot. You can figure this out. So the pedal actually has a connecting wire, electrical wire, so you can just push down on it. And let me go further back here. So you would push down on this right here, and that would allow you to manipulate the wheel at certain paces. Ooh, that's a little too close. Okay. So you can see this entirety with the wheel here. This is the various tools that you would use. So, all right, well, when I look at some of the questions related to this, I'll put this back up here. Okay. Get this a little bit better in focus. Okay, well, when I look at the questions here, you know, and a reflection, debriefing questions, how is the pace of the activity? And how does this compare to how you work normally? I mean, to me, it seemed pretty standard, sort of quick work. I sort of just took my time in terms of thinking about it, but when it actually came to putting it together, you know, it moved along fairly quickly. I had a pretty good idea that she wanted to do something that was creative and allowed artistic expression, which is something that she doesn't get at work. And so I think in that sense, once you get going, it moves a lot faster now. So I don't think it's really too far different from what I do in terms of instructional pace. You know, once I get the idea going, then I sort of just move from there and I think of all the procedures, objectives, and materials. Is the design activity is highly interactive. Based on what you did today, what parts of the process would you repeat and why? Wow, I don't even know where to start on that. What parts of the process you repeat? I think the interview part is pretty important. You need to get some feedback and understanding of and empathizing from the other person's point of view. You can't really create something unless you understand where they're coming from. So I think in that sense, you know, I would have clearly done the interview and then asked them some probing questions and then some more reflective questions and just try to get a good feel for what, and then I think the drawing part is important too, because you can't solve or create something unless you can see it. So how did you feel you're showing your prototype to your partner? How, you know, I don't know. I mean, I looked at it like, well, here it is. I didn't know what to think. I was hoping that, I knew that it was going to be rudimentary and primitive, but I felt like I had made something, and it was at least a start. How did you feel when your partner showed her or his prototype to you? Well, this is one directional, so that didn't happen. How did working closely with a person affect your design process? You know, it's a good question. I think I tried to create something that would be, if it was in the real world, would be functional and useful, and that would allow an opportunity for creative expression. And I thought that some of the suggestions that my wife gave later on after I came up with it were pretty useful as well. I mean, she came up with ideas like it could be improved if it was sitting in a box and it was portable, you know, so that the water was on it. You know, how would you make it easier to work, you know, the work easier? The idea of, you know, putting it in a box wouldn't be so messy, and that the water would drain out of the bottom of the box, and that it would, you know, that you would have an opportunity for some fluid so that you could, you know, work with the clay more easily. That was pretty practical. And the idea that it was portable so that you could move it around. I think she was thinking, you know, you could use it just whenever you want it, which is a pretty cool idea, I think. What did you learn about the design experience? That it's really challenging. That you really, I don't think I created anything really too original. But if I were to take time on something, let's say like a computer app, I think you have to have an open mind, obviously. You can't reject ideas, as they mentioned in the deep dives, and you have to keep playing with things, and it's okay to fail. You know, it's okay to come up with, and then you know, you just keep coming up with new ideas, things that work and that don't, and that's all right. How is this similar or different from the problem solving or engineering or instructional design? I think it depends. I mean, sometimes the instructional design sometimes can be abstracted a little bit because we tend to emphasize the behavioral model of looking at like specific, you know, always the assessment, what are you going to produce, but it's often abstract. It's not paper. It's not something that's an artifact, sort of like a maker movement kind of thing, you know. It's not quite like that. So I think in that sense, this is easier to see because you're actually producing something. And I think in that way, maybe that's learn by doing is probably the best way. And so, in my view, I guess if I were to look at anything from any content subject area, I think ultimately what you want students to do is to produce a poem or a 3-part digital story or a science experiment where you're actually out and doing the science that an actual scientist would do. I think that kind of learning is much more, it stays in your mind, the connections stay in your mind, it's more relevant, and you think and act like the actual scientist. So I think in that sense, this sort of gives you, as a teacher, a more practical way of thinking about, if I were to come up with lessons that were more artifact oriented and more collaborative, this sort of design, even if it's at a primitive, you know, pottery wheel, gives you an idea of what a student would experience and how you would design something that is more constructive and collaborative in nature, not necessarily just some abstract, you know, for an assessment. Here's the basic knowledge. We're going to look at a math problem. Now we're going to do it. I mean, I think it's just better when you produce something that's real and tangible. I think students enjoy it more, and you know, they get something more out of it. And I think as an educator, you do as well. You want something as well. So I guess that's what I think about the problem solving, engineering part of it. All right, well, that's it. Thanks again, and I'm looking forward to the next design project.